Bishikalanfus, and welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is an Arabic expression meaning with dissection of the souls.
Oh, dear Lord. Souls.
Souls. This podcast is now souls-like. Idiomatically, that means with great effort, which is what it seems everyone had to perform to complete both the sprint and the race in Qatar. I'm Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
I am very good. I'm very excited to talk about the sprint. The sprint was great. And my soul, I think, is with the sprint. My other soul died during the feature race. Yeah, during the Grand Prix. Sorry, feature race. This isn't F2. The Grand Prix.
Also joining us, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
Not too bad. Just hanging out, podcasting, going through my Windows event viewer.
Oh, great. I hope you make it to the end of this podcast. If you are new to this podcast, a very warm, not too hot welcome to you. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode, which assumes no prior F1 knowledge, explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 216. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release an ad-free version of the podcast, along with bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for our patrons. They cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all of that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. What do we have going on this month, Denny?
This month, we are finally going to engage with work that is no longer struck. Gran Turismo, which I've just Googled now, and according to Google Translate, Turismo stands for tourism. I don't think that's really true in the context of Gran Turismo.
Does it mean
but
Grand
I think,
Tour?
I'm sure it means Grand Tour. That's why Jeremy Clarkson probably named that show that thing. But I think the idea of it,
PlayStation games.
He loves PlayStation games. I just think it'd be much funnier if we just call it Big Tourism. I think that's a really good name for it. This is the Sony Pictures latest movie where they strapped a bunch of big cameras to cars and drove them around. And Legolas is apparently a manager of someone in there. So, sounds like a good time. I'm excited to watch it. I'm sure if I'm going to guess, I'm going to put it out there, bet it's going to have a great story. Bet it's not going to have a great story. Bet it's going to have some great cars driving. And that's the most important thing in a movie about car driving.
It is. This is a Neil Blomkamp film, is it not?
I don't think. Did he direct it? Did he really?
Yeah.
I think so.
Wow. Well, Blomkamp is a I won't say hit or miss. I think it's a flavor. You know, and I think sometimes that flavor kind of resonates with more people in a sort of a hit, I guess. And then sometimes, what was the name of his series that he put out on Netflix? That was it Love, Death, and Robots? No, he didn't do that. It was something else. Oats was it was called. It was like a kickstarted sci-fi anthology thing. Or like crowdfunded, not Kickstarted, crowdfunded. He's been out there doing a lot of stuff. He had that Halo movie that didn't come together as well, right? There was a lot of stuff.
That was, man, what a missed opportunity. Like, I think if anyone could have made a good Halo movie, like somebody was born to that. But one thing occurs to me that I forgot to bring up in the pre-show.
What?
Not to throw a little monkey wrench into this. SAG-AFTRA is still on strike.
Oh, you're right.
What?
Oh no, the actors.
The writers came to agreement with AMPTP. SAG-AFTRA has not. Which was the original precipitating event of all this.
That's true. Is Legolas the union?
Everyone's been like so stoked about the writers like striking their bargain,
right?
And like returning to work, and like poor little SAG-AFTRA people are like, "All right, we won, right?" And SAG-AFTRA is there like still fighting.
Oh no, Rob! I've just realized something as well. Didn't a large amount of the motor car building industry also go on strike recently?
Not good cars. Sorry.
Whoa.
What?
Whoa.
Not
Shots
the
fired.
kinds of cars we care about.
Wow.
No, that's true. Like UAW workers make Camaros, they make Mustangs, they make Blackwings.
How dare you?
And they make Corvettes, and unfortunately, that is the exhaustive list of good American cars.
Okay. So is it Mustang making people? Because until my Mustang was stolen and used as a crystal meth dildo party machine.
Not an exaggeration.
Not an exaggeration.
From what I hear about Ford build quality, that might have just been under the surface of the trim the entire time.
That dildo was just holding up the spare tire. The
meth heads
time.
were like, "Oh my god, there's just a dildo under this shift lever. I hate this. Let's leave this car."
Should we start this episode over?
Absolutely not. This is great stuff. This is brilliant.
It's 10:30. I'm so loopy.
Yeah.
Sorry. It just occurred to me. I was like, wait.
Well, we'll figure something out. How about that? Let's get to the race because, guys, we have so much to talk about.
Well, we will once we have said thank you to all of our amazing title sponsors: Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SCS, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, at Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, TelemetryDoc.com, FTC, James Andrew Perla Adams, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foote, Abdullah Al-Thani, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, The Space Above Us Podcast, Bunny Fiend, Snigs, Alex Goucher, Max Fartar, Circuit Demon, Troy Stammer, Berto Roca, William Rumpf, Irvine, Clinical Research, Lachlan the Maddened Man, Jason Kelly, and M Squared Racing continues to welcome Ellie. Welcome, Ellie.
Welcome, Ellie, to Qatar. We've got so many events to tell you about. Starting with, I'm gonna go the sprint grid, then the sprint, and then qualifying and the race. How's that?
Fair.
Okay.
Fair.
On pole position, or whatever the front of the sprint grid is called, Oscar Piastri, and behind him, not Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, who would probably have had it, but he went wide on the very last corner at the end of the shootout. Third is where Max Verstappen lines up. And behind them, we've got George Russell, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas lining up 7th, Sergio Perez in 8th, then Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon in 10th, followed by Pierre Gasly, Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, Liam Lawson, Zhou Guanyu, Lance Stroll qualifying there for the sprint in 16th place. Not happy as he exited the car.
We'll talk about that later.
17th is Alex Albon, Yuki Tsunoda, and Kevin Magnussen. And then Logan Sargent in 20th. Do we want to talk about that later, or you want to talk about Lance Stroll being angry right now?
Yeah, but let's talk about it now, I guess. So what do you guys remember? Do you want to talk about it first, or should we talk about what the FAA is going
Let's
to?
Let's talk about how it unfolded, because he got eliminated, and then we saw him getting out of the car, and I think my first, because I wasn't paying that close attention, and then I heard Crofty be like, "Did we just see Lance Stroll punch a door?" And Karun was like, "Yes, I think we did," but on replay, it might have been worse.
Yes.
Weird interaction from beginning to end, though. He gets out of his car after a shitty qualifying session, and his personal trainer starts wagging his finger at him in just kind of a weird way, like "I told you so" or something. But it's like kind of a weird vibe.
Yeah.
And then he shoves him out of the way, and then as they're going around the corner, that sort of leads out of the garage, we saw him shove the trainer pretty hard.
Yeah, but don't worry. According to Lance, he said, "We're good. He's a bro. We just go through the frustration together, and we ride together," which is a pretty fantastic quote. According to the FAA, this may have contravened FAA rules, policies, and procedures, although he also had a fairly curt, maybe, interview with the press right afterwards.
7 words, I think.
Yeah. He did, I think in fairness to him, he did sort of seem lost for words in that interview. He did genuinely seem to not really, we're used to some of the drivers doing this. Hamilton does it sometimes, right? Where he just seems like doesn't really want to give an interview, so he's giving short answers to get out of there. Lots of the drivers,
because they're mandated to do that. Yeah,
exactly. Lance seemed like he was sort of just enraged and frustrated and probably disappointed in himself and embarrassed and whatever. He seemed like he was going through it. So the answers were short, but you really got a feeling of what he was sort of feeling or saying, I think.
Yeah, a little bit of context is that qualifying for the race happened before this, and he qualified 16th there as well, which was the 4th time in a row that he was out in Q1.
Yeah, which, bit of an issue when the other car is making its way into Q3.
Yeah.
And we did worry about this with Alonso and Stroll. We talked about the chances that perhaps this would be a comparison that would not look favorably on Stroll. I think Stroll has driven better though. Like it seems like he is in a rush, or some people have said he's checked out. I don't know if that's the case, but he just seems like he's having a much harder time of this. And the fact that Alonso has adopted this sort of weird buddy mentality while also trouncing him is maybe not helping the fact, or maybe it's making it better. I'm not sure. It's the fact that there doesn't seem to be much competition between them, I guess, is the point that I'm trying to make here. So the FA is looking into it. Nobody's quite sure what they're referring to, but it's most likely what happened in the garage. You're not supposed to be obviously doing things that may bring the sport or the series into disrepute, but that is probably the last of Lance's worries at the moment. As we sort of barrel towards the end of the season, this is probably a season he can't wait to end as fast as possible.
Well, we can't wait to start the sprint, Danny. What do you say?
Oh my God, starting the sprint. Okay, I'm casting my eyes back. So both McLarens... Is this the one? No, so the incident was in the race. This was the one where... Oh, we did have an incident on turn 2 on this one as well. So Piastri defends from his teammate on the right side. They all get around fairly good. On the exit of turn 2, we see... so Lando has a bad start, doesn't he? He ends up toppling down pretty quickly.
Russell has a good one.
He does, yes.
Verstappen also gets swamped.
And Lando is back in 5th or 6th, I think, by the time they've reached that turn. And then we see an AlphaTauri go off in the background, and it's Logan Sargent. And upon replay, as we're all sort of it's a bit
Liam
of a...
Lawson.
Sorry, Liam Lawson. Sorry, yes. Upon replay, we're sort of half expecting there to be some sort of contact because it is a part of the track. We'll later see some of that happen, where you tend to get a bit of 2 into 3 and all that sort of stuff. But he just loses it, man. He just loses it at a cold tires, dusty track, whatever it is. They were struggling with grip all weekend. The practice session was sort of not accurate either because it was the only time they were out in the daytime, basically. So it gave them 0 results at all. Or data, but yeah, he just lost it, and it's kind of an unfortunate way to start your race week, your racing part of your weekend.
Well, that puts me in mind of something that becomes a storyline for the whole weekend. This was a 19-lap sprint race, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And after this race, Pirelli issued a directive that no tire, any compound, would be allowed to run for more than 19 laps.
Yeah.
So there's stuff in this session that they were seeing, and I think they did some testing subsequent to that indicated that they had not really dialed in the tires very well for this circuit at all. Though some of that is also to do with, I guess this track has different sorts of curbs.
Yeah.
Than they are used to.
This
is part of it.
This year they added a bunch of these curves that have sort of troughs on the other sides of them, which they were worried at the start of the weekend might cause these cars, which are riding quite low. Obviously, this is the last time we raced here was pre the new regs, that it would cause some underfloor damage. But actually, one thing that happened after we recorded the podcast last week, but before they started, is that they changed one of the turns. I think it's 17. They edged off the turn. It was a sharper turn, and they sort of made it rounder because they were also worried about the amount of load that was hitting the front left, I think it was, because this is a clockwise track. So they were worried there. And this is all coming off of what we talked about last week, which was this was the track back 2 years ago where there was just a bunch of tire failures that sort of seemed somewhat unexplainable. And they actually did resurface the track as well prior to this one too. And we talked last week about how this is kind of a bike track. So in many ways, these sort of medium to high speed corners don't necessarily suit the rubber they have here. But yeah, that was crazy for them to bring in that edict, which then, of course, really actually put the Red Bulls at a bit of a disadvantage. But I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get into the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I was surprised by my reaction to Lawson going off, going like, "Oh, I didn't expect that from him," which is funny because like I've only watched him for like 3 races or something.
Yeah.
But you know, it takes only that long to I guess get an opinion of somebody, and even David Coulthard was like, "Oh wow, that was surprising." But yeah, I don't think it has done much to diminish his shine. So yeah, stay tuned for next year's silly season to see. Probably not.
It might be a year-long silly season.
That's true.
Yeah, true.
Yes, on the restart, one of the things that, like, Russell had a great start, the McLarens didn't, but the restart, similar thing happens where we get Russell going straight at Piastri immediately and getting him going inside. And it looked really decisive, and the key difference there is Russell was on soft tires, and Hamilton had gone to mediums. And then Piastri was on mediums as well. I think Norris was. I don't think McLaren split strategy, did they?
Correct.
I think they were medium.
Yeah.
But for a minute there, it looked like Russell was just going to drive away with this thing. That the guys on soft tires were carving through the field pretty well, and you were almost getting kind of a weird sorting effect happening, where the medium tires were sort of shuffling toward the bottom of the standings. The softs were all bubbling up, and then the big question became, well, how are these things going to hold up, especially given what we knew about how that flowing nature of the circuit that we talked about during the track walk, how was that going to affect tire wear? And I don't think it was very long at all. I feel like I guess we didn't have very much racing before we did see Sargent. I think this is why you misspoke earlier, Danny. Poor Logan Sargent, to channel David Hobbs talking about poor old Ralf Schumacher. Poor Logan Sargent went skidding off into the gravel and was taken out shortly after the restart. I think he made it like a lap and a half. It was pretty fast. And so we ended up with another another full course caution, and
exactly. I think, and that's one thing that I was thinking. Maybe the strategy with the softs was that if they get enough safety cars, they might be able to get through the sprint. But in fairness to the teams here, they were able to get a lot of these cars out of that gravel. Because the thing with gravel is you just tend to have a lot more like double waved yellows, or in the modern era, probably just a safety car, just to be super, super safe. But they were actually able to get the cars off pretty quick, which I think helped a lot. Well, helped them on the mediums, definitely, but it helped keep the racing flowing, which is important.
Yeah, although we did get 3 safety cars in 19
But they were
laps,
short.
So.
That's the thing. It wasn't like other circuits where it takes absolutely forever to get the cars off,
Well, and it's nice in a sprint. I'll give the sprint format this. There's really not a lot of upshot into taking advantage of a safety car to pit if you're assuming that no one is stopping for tires. So there's not a ton of people you're going to see, basically trying to win it on tire strategy through the Fluko safety car. But the racing that was really cooking was, sometimes you get the sense that Ocon and Alonso did not part friends. Things were testy toward the end of their time at Alpine, and that sort of seemed to pick up both before Sargent went off and right after. They were having a real battle out there on track. Really good hard racing. Not a lot of space being given, but also it didn't feel sketchy as far as how they were going at it. It was just like real cutthroat racing. Also kind of cutthroat on the restart was Russell doing timing it really well, backing the field up behind him, and then launching to leave Piastri in the dust. And that was a minute where it felt like he might drive away with this, but I feel like immediately after, because I made this note, lap 8, so lap after the restart, you see Russell go purple, And then Piastri starts hitting purple sectors, meaning that like whatever Russell's standing purple time was, it is now being bested as Piastri is going around the track, and George was not extending that lead despite having that great launch off the start. And that was probably the first inkling I had that, oh wow, the softs they're not long for this world.
Lap 10 it was, I think, when Piastri got that radio call confirming basically that like the soft runners are starting to struggle now. This race is going to come back to us.
Yeah, and it's the lap prior that Verstappen just blasts by Leclerc on the main straight for fourth place after the Ferraris, who are also on softs, had just blitzed him and Norris at the start. And then Sainz, this and a little bit before that, had tried to take it to Piastri, but Piastri did hold that position and kept second place. But yes, so on lap 10, Piastri gaining on Russell and just cruises by him with DRS. And at the same time, Norris gets by Leclerc into turn 1 for 5th place. And immediately after that, we cut to a big cloud of dust and a couple of cars off the road in the gravel trap. And one of those cars is Sergio Perez, effectively sealing Verstappen's championship victory.
Yes, done and dusted. 3-1 we got here. Do you want me to talk through it?
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess when it all happened, you could see a Haas driving away, and then the struck-in Red Bull of Perez, and then very slowly in the dust as it started to settle, you could also see Ocon sitting out there as well. Effectively coming around turn 1, you had Ocon attempting to go around the outside of Hülkenberg. Perez was behind Hülkenberg or behind Ocon when he was trying to do that, but with the two of them battling, Perez managed to get up the inside of Hülkenberg as well. Ocon wouldn't have necessarily known that. This wasn't we'll talk about the start of the Grand Prix on turn 1 and why that's a little bit different. So he is going around the outside of Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg is, getting squeezed from the right side from Perez. Hülkenberg, to his credit, did in the end slam on the brakes, try to get out of it. Like he noticed that Ocon wouldn't have known.
Saw the door closing.
Exactly, and Perez perhaps could have known that Ocon was there, but he didn't. He was also like leaving plenty of room. Like this wasn't a situation in which Sergio was actually at fault or anything. Hülkenberg attempted, maybe this is why his car kept going for a little while. He did try and slam on the brakes, but it was just a little bit too late. Ocon hits the front left of Hülkenberg. His nose turns in, basically shreds the entire side pod of Sergio on the left-hand side. Both cars go out and they are done and dusted. And Hülkenberg was soon to retire, right? I think it was a lap later he came in. Yeah. Racing incident, one of those ones, but it's not exactly helping Checo's cause,
Certainly not.
No, it was unfortunate because it reminded me a bit of the famous like Hakkinen Schumacher battle at Spa, but like the positions are flipped because in this case the the battle that like the two drivers knew they were engaged in a battle, and the third car joining instead of being pursuing Mika Hakkinen and them catching up with a slower car up ahead. It's Perez seeing an opportunity to maybe bag both, but it comes up so fast that like I don't think they ever fully internalized that a third party had joined the battle. Yeah. And so he was just like, it was a gap you got to go for. It didn't work out, but in terms of those were good positions to get. It damn near worked, and I think he had the pace on both of them. Just didn't go that way, but sometimes that's just the nature of the rut you're in with F1.
Yeah, because it was a messy one because Ocon had been overtaken by Hülkenberg on the way into one, so it was one of those switchback overtakes he was attempting to do, and yeah, there's just too much going on, I guess, for especially those two. Perez, like I said, kind of had an idea of what was going on, but he's not who squeezed them. It was Ocon coming back in who was obviously ahead of both of them when they were going down the straight. So yeah, unfortunate, one of those ones.
Yeah, we do get a third safety car and then a restart on lap 14. Piastri now in the lead, and the medium tires have much more life in them. Verstappen gets by Russell into second, and a few laps later, Norris gets by Leclerc into fifth, and then Sainz just a few corners later for fourth place. And on the final lap, Norris squeezes by Russell to take third, while Hamilton, who's also on mediums, gets by Leclerc and Sainz into fifth. So those, I don't think the teams knew that the timing was going to be like that, but it really, really worked out for the medium runners. So in the end, the sprint was won by one Oscar Piastri. The commentators love to say his first victory in F1.
Yes.
Which I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
It's not a Grand Prix. It's a...
Yeah.
We're still not sure what to call any of this. So Oscar was delighted to pull up to Parc Fermé and then have Max Verstappen drive onto a very colourful podium. I felt for him, but yeah, I guess that's what's going to happen. But it is very funny how Verstappen's winning of the championship has been such a moot point for basically months at this. Nobody really has ever given any credence to the idea that Checo is going to catch up with him. It's been a mathematical certainty only recently, but it was like a logical certainty, back in May. It felt like the writing was on the wall. So I could not have been less. It was almost weird to be celebrating and winning the championship. It was all right, yeah.
Well, he only needed 3 points going into the sprint. You're like, okay.
Somebody wrote in last week that maybe for there should be a mercy rule where once you've locked up the championship, it's thank you, no more racing, goodbye, and we just run Formula 1.5 for the remainder of the year. And that'd be awesome if we just hey, great, you prestige.
It's like Pyre. They ascend. They get out.
Prestige.
Yeah. Yes. But the other thing that's just so funny is it is just not an interesting story is the thing. And there's only so many ways you can write wow, Max is just so hooked up with that car. What a triumph of engineering, what perfect execution week after week. Guy badly needs a rival. And it's one of those things for the legacy question. The guy needs to bag a championship against someone who's in similar machinery, and a ref isn't throwing the result at the last minute, one way or the other. But he desperately needs that. I wonder how we'd regard Hamilton if Rosberg hadn't nabbed that one championship.
Yeah, and
just that
and in
one.
fairness, even some of his other, Bottas and he's had, and Rosberg, the years he didn't win, at least I felt there was more of a fight than what we're getting with Checo. You know what I mean? I think Max has had that in non-championship winning seasons with other drivers too. It's just that sort of in a way he's unlucky that it's happening now. I also felt bad for him that I cannot imagine of the last 10 races, the sprint in Qatar might have been the most depressing place to win the championship. Of all, because it's the second time we've been here, it was the sprint race. It wasn't even the Grand Prix. It wasn't any of the
It's a weird energy.
I think I saw a headline in Race Fans that said 38,000 people watched in person.
Okay, yeah.
Max Verstappen win the championship.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bummer. He could have been in Vegas, and that's a ton of people. That might be a bad track, but it'll be fun. Or it could have been Interlagos, or I guess Kota might.
That's a really good A's game.
He should have faked. He should have faked pulling a hammy or something, getting into the car, and been shit. I just gotta. I'll see you in Vegas.
Maybe that was Checo's master plan, just to make him. He was banking on getting it somewhere fun. No, I felt bad for him, but they tried to make it fun with the little light up, drive the car up thing, which we haven't seen in a while. There was a time where they did that for every race, and then they stopped. Remember, was it the start of the season? Where they had the little drive up. Every time they do it, I'm worried. It's going to be when you pull in to get your oil change, and you're just terrified you're going to drive down the little hole in the middle and kill somebody. I always.
Well, yes, every time, and in my head, I'm that hole is so huge. My car could just fall into it like a car in Ghostbusters, and then the reality is it's a tiny little slot. But the other part was. Was that just cameras correcting for the change in exposure, or did they dim the track? Because there was a cut to when he was pulling up on the little stand, and the lights cut so dramatically that I was like, oh God, did they just lose power to the circuit or something?
Turn the floods off. Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder if they turned the floods off to make that little stage area pop more.
Hopefully before all the cars came in, because they don't have lights on them.
It looked dark when people were pulling up. That occurred to me.
As for the rest of the result, Lando Norris rounded out the podium for the sprint, followed by George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, and Fernando Alonso rounding out the points-paying positions. Pierre Gasly in 9th, Valtteri Bottas in 10th, followed by Tsunoda, Leclerc, Magnussen, Zhou, and Stroll in 15th. The DNFs of this 19-lap race, Hülkenberg, Ocon, Perez, Sargent, and Lawson. I was afraid for what this would portend for the actual race.
I was excited.
And we probably would have gotten that had not the FIA issued their edict for no more than 18 laps on one set of tires. That is inclusive, by the way, of the laps that they had done in prior sessions.
Yes, very true. It did seem that we were going to get a real, tire strategy, safety car-esque race. I don't really know if that's what happened in the end. It seemed to be pretty by the numbers.
Well, so what the tire rule did is effectively forced a lot of hands in terms of pit stop strategy, which did make the race kind of hard to follow at times. Yeah. But as race fans pointed out, this also sort of made it a flat-out race. I have a quote here from their article. In the previous races, Red Bull's strength has been extracting consistently quick lap times from its tires the longer it runs them for. Denied the option of running the tires as long as they would have liked, a key aspect of Red Bull's superiority was neutralized. So, in that respect, it did make things a little more interesting. But let's run down the race grid here. Max Verstappen did start on top, the true pole position from qualifying. Behind him, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Then Fernando Alonso, Charles Leclerc in 5th. Oscar Piastri had a time good enough for 3rd place, but had his race time deleted during his interview.
Yeah, killer.
Which was a killer. Pierre Gasly lines up 7th, Esteban Ocon 8th, Valtteri Bottas 9th, and Lando Norris in 10th. He also had his time deleted and was escorted away from the top 3 circle. Yuki Tsunoda 11th. Carlos Sainz qualified 12th, but is a DNS. Did not start for this race due to a fuel leak. The commentators saying that Ferrari had replaced the energy store, the battery, on both of the cars, and that may have, they were surmising, potentially caused a fuel leak that could not be repaired on Sainz's car. In 13th place, Alex Albon, followed by Hülkenberg, Sargent in 15th, Lance Stroll in that 16th place that he loves so much. Liam Lawson 17th, Kevin Magnussen 18th, Zhou Guanyu 19th, and Sergio Perez in 20th, qualified 13th, but because of that incident in the sprint, had to change some power unit elements and thus starts from the pit lane.
Yes.
So, a funny side effect of Sainz being a DNS is that caused Hülkenberg to line up happened. Accidentally in Sainz's slot.
Did you see the replay?
Yeah, he knew.
The double take, though, the beat where he pulls it up neatly and he starts looking around and you can just see the coin drop.
So,
it was the most Sims ass. Like, if they ever do, like, Sims, but you can be, a race driver now. Yeah, that was a total, oh, no.
Such a bummer.
That earned him, unfortunately, a 10-second penalty in the race. But, Danny, why don't you take us through the start?
Sure. So they all get off the line, and Hamilton, being in 3rd position, manages to get that little bit of toe off of Max. Max drives to the right side to basically cover off Russell. And then Hamilton, smartly and tactically, kind of boxes Russell in a little bit. Like, he's now got that open bit of space that has just sort of appeared as Max has turned over. So Hamilton's going to go and fill that space. As they approach turn 1, they sort of fan out. Russell, there's enough space around the outside of Verstappen, Hamilton has sort of moved over to take the outside line around turn 1. Now, the outside line around turn 1 is going to be the dirtiest, least attractive part of the track to have any grip coming out of it. So it's going to behoove Hamilton to get this overtake done as quickly as humanly possible so we can turn in as quickly as he can. Unfortunately, Hamilton turns in way too quick. He subsequently has apologized to Russell, that the Mercedes team were very eager to put on their Instagram after the race as a story. But yeah, he hits the front of Russell's car with such severity that one of his wheels comes off and Hamilton is straight out into the dirt. Both drivers protest over the radio, blaming the other, but pretty soon afterwards it was pretty clear to see that this was a Hamilton mistake.
Russell, ever the politician, stopped short of saying, of blaming. He said, we talked about this 2 races in a row, guys.
And then he comes back on the radio like a lap later and is maybe even more diplomatic. He sort of like is apologizing, but saying like, I didn't have anywhere to go. Like he's a bit worried maybe that maybe he was a bit wrong or something.
Well, so and here's the thing. So like, and Hamilton was a bit heated immediately after being like, I just got taken out by my own teammate when they asked him how he's doing. It was one of those things where, like, ultimately Hamilton had a lot of track to the outside, to the left. He didn't need to cut across that steeply. The balance of the blame probably does lie with him. But Russell had put himself in a box. Like, sometimes it goes that way. Like, you're drafting up behind somebody, and there's just nowhere to cut out to. Like, he was going to have to be balked heading into that corner. And instead he tried to swerve out to maintain a bit more speed to go get Max. But, like, he'd already kind of lost that line. Lewis was coming on fast. So I think it's like kind of one of those quintessential, you'd say maybe it's a bit more Lewis's fault, but to my way of thinking, there was an inherent weakness to the tactic George adopted at the start, which was just that, you're leaving the other lane effectively open to anyone who's coming up fast, alongside you, and you're not in control of that anymore. He was driving into the tie. He was driving in on the inside line.
Yeah, I guess it's thinking in your head is like, in that instance, is Russell driving against Hamilton or is he driving against Verstappen? Like, is he thinking about turn 2 and thinking about being on the inside of turn 2? And this is where I want to be. Is he thinking, you know what? If I go take this lane, then I can brake later than I can if I'm right stuck behind Max, and then that maybe benefits me, or maybe I'll be in a difficult position for Lewis. The one thing that definitely sticks with me is that Lewis knew where everyone was, right? Because it's not like the sprint race where there's this mismatch of things that have happened and the knock-on kind of doesn't really realize that they're going 3 into 2. Hamilton knows that Max is where he is, and he's going to have to brake and take that turn. So you can imagine that he knows that they're all going to pull out a little bit more, which makes the sort of rashness of the turn he did. It was an optimistic overtake, maybe.
I do wonder how much do teams coordinate this stuff. I feel like that's probably especially that in the wake of stuff like this, maybe you talk about it more in the pre-race meeting. But it's one of those cases where this kind of thing is foreseeable, in terms of how the opening could shake out. And I do wonder to what degree do the drivers kind of stake out intentions based on what Max is
so doing. And the other thing that is maybe worth mentioning that I should have said earlier was that Hamilton's on softs and the other guys are on mediums, right, in this situation.
Oh, it had flipped around.
Yes,
for the race
so
start?
I believe Hamilton on the formation lap said, I'm going to be gobbled up by these guys. Like, he's complaining that he's on softs and the rest of them aren't. That am I right?
No, but wait, that would help him.
It would help him at the start. I think it's that he's going to be gobbled up later on. Am I remembering this right? I think that was the case, and that perhaps he was overly eager to get race position, considering that he maybe had to like get the jump on him in the softs early so that he could warrant that tire choice at the start. These races mix together a little bit in my head, but I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I remember that being the case beforehand, and maybe thinking in the moment, oh, maybe that's why he went for it so dramatically. But you're right. Like I would have thought that 2 cars behind Verstappen in that situation, much in the way the McLarens were first and second, like they surely had conversations about what their strategies were going to be in the sprint race. So yeah, it's a shame that for Mercedes fans that they cut to a bunch of Hamilton fans in the crowd, and I felt really bad for them because I'm like, you don't get to see him driving around now. We don't get to see Lewis in the mix there at the top of the field.
Well, Russell pits, having made it, stayed out of the gravel. He comes back, puts on a new set of mediums, and is effectively committing to a 4-stop race because of that weird, 18-lap stint that everyone is mandated to do, or no more, rather. And by lap 6, he has made it up to 14th. And goes around the outside of Sergio Perez. He on the hard tires to Russell's mediums. And Russell just keeps going. He gets by Zhou and the Williams cars in the next few laps. Norris also on the move, having lost a number of positions at the start. Claws back 6th place from Leclerc at the first corner on lap 19. And it's not until lap 21 or so when Russell finally hits Gasly that he encounters a bit of resistance. Gasly pushes him wide, but Russell does get him on the next lap for 7th. And one big battle in the middle of this race is between the McLarens and Alonso. And on lap 28, Norris pits, and I think this is where this happens, smashes the pit stop record with a 1.8 flat, ensuring that he comes out ahead of Alonso. It's wild. I will put a link to that in the show notes. There's like a 60-second YouTube video.
Didn't they do their damnedest to legislate sub 2-second pit stops out of existence? Because the big thing was they changed how the wheel guns register that there's the wheel's safe and ready to release. They slowed that down so that somebody has to actually pause a beat and take note that everything's clear. So this is a wild, they have changed how pit stops work to basically try and prevent people from routinely braking 2 seconds. This is one of those shattering, did that car actually stop?
Yeah. It just looks so smooth. It's like what you imagine. It's the perfect pit stop. It just looks, no one makes anything, any wrong move. It's pretty wild to watch.
I forget who's in the box ahead of them. But when they, that you have the courteous other pit crews holding the wires in. Did you see the reaction from the guy?
He's shaking his hand ooh, hot.
Ooh, he does. Game respects game them a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty good. That was pretty nice. I like that.
I'm just noting my notes for this race are so wild though. The sheer number of stuff happening, I think, because this everyone's doing quali laps, everyone's just pitting rapid fire. The sheer number of fights that are happening throughout
there's so
all
many.
This are just it's just nuts.
Yeah, because you've got people on different strategies coming in at different times. Because it's not really about tire strategy or pit strategy so much as it is about we're mandated to pit, and we got some safety cars going on. You're right. It's just kind of everything happening all the time.
I wanted to call out. Did you see at lap 22? I think we got one of the best helicopter shots of the year.
Oh, really?
As it was just full tilt helicopter running parallel to the track, capturing an entire run of the cars heading through I think the back sectors of the race with all the stadium lights catching the water vapor.
Nice.
Just an incredible moment. One of those things where that helicopter was probably standing off waiting to hit it to get this cinematic shot. And it was great. I have mixed feelings sometimes about these venues, but man, these night races out in the desert are photogenic.
Yeah. Speaking of Alonso, on lap 33, he has a wobble similar to one he had early in the race, except this time he flies off into the gravel, does well to keep the car moving, though, and rejoins the track, albeit at a pretty high rate of speed. I didn't see whether he got dinged for that or not.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I don't know that I did see him getting dinged, but it was kind of a textbook unsafe rejoin.
Yeah, he just
because the Ferraris were right
YOLO's
there.
back on there.
Because he hits an escape road, right? So he's just driving down this road that's not being used, and it kind of just turns on. Yeah,
You can't pull that in Forza.
yeah, you're right.
That's right.
Well, also though, bearing in mind, because I had this note, lap 26. And this is my first inkling something weird was maybe going on with this race. Lap 26, Alonso got before this incident. Alonso got on the radio and reported his seat was burning.
That's right.
And was there anything they could do? And then
He even jokes like, "Can you throw some water on me?"
Right.
Which, as the commentators,
not a joke.
The commentators pointed out, definitely used to happen in like IndyCar and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe
then
not
lap
a joke.
35. Well, and the reason apparently they can't do it is because that is technically adding weight to the car. So that is the real reason you can't do that.
amazing.
Is because that is one of the ways you know how like closely they cut it with weights. If you're dumping buckets of water in there, you're weighing down the cockpit a bit. Lap 35, as Russell and Zhou are renewing their duels, Sargent reports that he is feeling really, really unwell. And they ask him whether he can continue, and he says he wants to. He says, "I want to see this through. I'll give you my word." And then my next note, lap 41, he gets on the radio and is like, "I really don't feel well. I need to stop." And they tell him there's no shame in it. And I thought that meant like I need to pull into the pits. The minute he comes off it, he comes all the way off it.
Yeah.
He went into like limp mode and pulled off to the side and just like coasted to the pits.
I think he was partially letting people pass him, but like he did not seem eager to get back to the pits. I think he just wanted to, or not get back there as fast as he could. He just wanted to like stop racing so hard.
I'm not sure. I wonder if he could.
Right.
Physically.
Yeah, exactly.
Could he still maintain the pace? Because the other thing is, so that happened in lap 41. I don't know if I noted it. So lap 46, camera cuts the Williams garage.
God.
He's just now managing to lift himself out of the car.
With their help.
So
it was like Senna when he won Interlagos. You know what I mean? Like when they had to pull him out of the car. That was the first inclination, really, I think, to me of, oh no, this heat is an issue. This is worse than Singapore.
Yeah, I mean, we hear about that sometimes, right? Like, oh, the drivers lose like a kilogram or 3 pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to actually have like not only an F1 driver who they're pretty fit, but a young guy get literally toasted.
Worth mentioning that he had been battling some type of other sickness in the days before, so that might have also compounded a bit. But then, did you see the shot of, was it Russell? It must have been Russell. Like cooling his hands or something. Did you see that? Mm-hmm. Driving down
going down
full tilt down the straight. Yeah, and steering with his wrists, trying to cool his hands off, and cracking the visor, which I think Karun had mentioned. The track is so sandy, you really don't want to do that. But we saw multiple drivers cracking the visor.
Wow, that is crazy. Are
Well,
you even legally allowed to do that?
Well,
Like
sure.
safety wise, like I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's wild.
Did you see or hear or read what happened to Ocon?
No.
So there's a headline here, also on Race Fans. Quote, "You'd need to kill me before I withdraw from a race." Esteban Ocon said he would never voluntarily withdraw from a race, however bad he felt, after vomiting in his car in the Qatar Grand Prix.
Oh my God, in the helmet.
I think Gasly said he threw up twice, starting around lap 15.
You're kidding.
So this is what heat stroke does to you.
Right.
And heat stroke is not
You can die from heat.
not something to mess around with.
No, it's like, because it's one of those things where we'll talk about this more in the post race, but like heat exhaustion is the, like, you're still in control to some extent of, like, you can stop exerting yourself and like nothing physiologically has happened that can't sort of be like stopped.
Right.
Heat stroke, things are beginning to like take on a life of their own.
When your core body temperature reaches a certain point, there are things going on that you are no longer in control of.
And this whole like, it's not an option retiring. I was never going to do that. You need to kill me to retire.
Well, kill yourself, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah. You might get your wish.
Yeah.
Esteban, you try hard nerd.
We
we get it. You worked really hard to be here, but man,
in fairness, that's a really good line. For that sort of really does lay the blame, I guess, or the responsibility of this on F1's shoulders, on the FIA, because like if the driver's saying, "Look, we're gonna drive no matter what,"
yeah, you can't leave it up to these idiots.
Exactly. This reminds me, it's not fair. Yeah, exactly.
Which is the point Gasly made when talking about Spa, right? And just like visibility in the rain, where I think Gasly made the point where it's like, we're drivers, we're going to go.
Yeah.
Like we are going to charge into it, and it's a similar sort of thing. These guys, and this was the thing. Like, I guess Sargent hit a breaking point. It's really unfortunate because you know what the stakes are for him every race now. But if there was a guy out there who would have had an incentive to push it way past good sense, it would have been Sargent. This is a guy who, theoretically is driving for his career. And do you really want to be the only guy who retires from this due to the heat? Do you want to be the one who looks like, well, you were softer than the other 19 drivers on the Sainz didn't start, but you know what I mean? Like, do you want to be the one guy who tapped out due to feeling under the weather? That's probably not a position that the drivers should be placed in. It was really gnarly.
Yeah. Albon had to be pulled out of his car as well after the fact. It was
God,
not good.
I heard Stroll got out of his car and kind of drunkenly reeled toward an ambulance that was standing nearby to get taken care of. Like it was that bad. Which it was like, I think they, in some of the post-race stuff they're talking about, it was really humid for this time of Qatar at this time of year. The nights are warmer and they are humid. And when they've run this race historically and when they did the World Cup, it was later and it was drier. And it just never... It was 90 degrees and humid when the race rolled off.
Oh, God.
And Russell talking about that, cracking that visor, and all you're getting hit with is hot air. I think Bottas was describing it as... One of the drivers described it as near torture. Which I can't imagine. We talked about how physically uncomfortable these cockpits are. There is no room to move around by design, and then you're sort of cut you're pressed up against a ton of really hardworking electronics. Imagine the innate human all F1 drivers have sort of conquered the claustrophobia that comes with climbing into a cockpit like that.
Yeah, I don't even
But then the temperature just keeps going up and up and up and up, and you're not allowed to stop.
Yeah, don't even want to think about it. I mean, this race was weird top to bottom. We should also point out that there were tons of track limits penalties all over the place. Toward the end here, it's sort of a race between the two McLarens. And despite the fast stops, Norris does not get out ahead of Piastri and kind of spends the rest of the time chasing his teammate down, trying to lobby his team to let him through. Gasly also... Go ahead.
What do you think that radio message where they tell him we're happy with where things are and just maintain position? Do you remember? I've never heard a driver sing his argument back to the team. Did you note that?
Yeah, I forget exactly.
Sure?
Yeah.
I'm clearly faster. It was so bizarre. It was the most shit eating.
Lando's a weird dude. He is kind of a bizarre guy.
I mean, he is so weird. He's a Discord kid, right? He's on voice comms, with his engineer or with his mates in the esports world. That's his thing.
Yeah. Gasly also having a weird race, goes off track to pass Stroll. He's then instructed to give the position back, which he does, but also cedes a place to Perez at the same time, then passes him again a few laps later, but also appears to go off track. Very, very strange race, but it finally does end. Everyone can get out and go sit in their ice bath garbage cans. Max Verstappen wins the race. What do you know? Also gets fastest lap. Oscar Piastri comes home in second. Another podium for him, and Lando Norris in third. Then we've got George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu finishing in 9th place, getting 2 points after having started in 19th place, effectively the back of the grid because Sergio Perez started in the pit lane. Way to go, Joe. And then Sergio Perez finally does round out the top 10. Behind him, Lance Stroll just can't get anything from this weekend. He finishes 11th outside the points. Pierre Gasly 12th. Alex Albon 13th. Kevin Magnussen 14th. Yuki Tsunoda 15th. Then Hulkenberg, Lawson, and then the DNFs of Sargent and Hamilton, and the DNS of Sainz. Okay, that is the Qatar race weekend recap. We are going to take a break, and then we will get back to you with the news. All right, Danny, the news. We've already covered your news story here with Lance Stroll getting a talking to from the FIA. Second news item here, real quick one. Pirelli is going to be our tire sponsor through the year 2027. And this from the Autosport article. Bridgestone is known to have made a substantial financial offer, but in the end, F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali and Liberty Media have decided to stick with the known quantity of Pirelli. Which I guess makes sense, because this sport really does hinge on tires. Like, why would you take the gamble on completely, going with an unknown?
Awkward weekend, though, for this.
That is true.
To come through, where it's like, fellas, we need you to not run the tires so much.
It would have been worse if they were all exploding all over the place.
Yes, they did not want an American Grand Prix to happen here. Yeah.
Yes.
That's true. And also, like, I think Pirelli's probably proven at this point they're well set up to take on what can be a thankless role, because it's like, if the racing's not interesting enough, we need to change the tire. We need you to reformulate the tires and give us tires that'll do better racing. And then you do that, and the drivers are all like, "These tires suck. I hate them." Great. All right. Well, enjoy your brand your brand presentation in F1 as everyone just like bashes the tires constantly.
Well, speaking of scapegoats, Rob.
Is it scapegoating? I think we now have to formally acknowledge that the Sergio Perez death watch has begun. Because Red Bull have, for them, been somewhat circumspect about like his decline in form. Obviously they were probably distracted by trying to find some atlases to figure out where Sergio is from. But now that they've pinned that down, they have decided that he's just not getting it. He's just not getting the job done. And Horner, I can't tell if these are from two different interviews where he just like backs the car up and over Perez's dead body, or whether it's just like two stories being generated by the same press scrum. He said, "I think we really need to sit down with Checo because we know what he's capable of, and he's not hitting that form at the moment. We desperately need him to find that form to keep this second place in the championship." And he also starts musing about their rivals and the strengths they have in F1. You can see Mercedes have a pair of drivers. McLaren have you saw closely matched drivers. McLaren have a pair. Ferrari have a pair. They're quite tight between their respective drivers. I think we've had that at the earlier point in the year, but as the season has gone on, it's become more variant. We just need to get Checo back to the best form he's capable of.
Man, I don't know where Danny went, but I'm just going to keep rolling with this.
That's how they're going to do Checo, too.
Yeah, it's just...
Hey, weren't there two of these guys? No.
Christian Horner got you, Danny.
Did you guys keep podcasting? Or?
We did. Yeah.
We kept rolling.
Appreciate it. Do you know what happened?
But anyway, like,
can I tell you what happened? Because it is quite funny.
What happened?
Yeah.
My internet cut off, and I was like, "What's going on?" I looked up at the time, and I was like, "I think this is about the time I checked into this hotel yesterday and bought that 24 hours of premium internet."
Oh my God.
So I had to disconnect from the internet, put in my reconnect, do the thing, and that. So I'm good. I'm good for another 24 hours, boys.
Great.
Let's go.
This is what your Patreon dollars are going towards Danny's internet.
I'll just say, though, like, those comments from Christian do not sound like Oh yeah, go on, Checo. You got a full season to turn this boat around. This feels like the seat is just scorching Qatar-like hot for him heading into next year.
Yeah, well, so all right, here are my two options here or three options, I guess, for pairing Max Verstappen with a capable teammate. One, Sergio Perez. Two, Daniel Ricciardo with 2 broken wrists, or Liam Lawson straight in. What do you think?
Not the third one. We've already ruined enough young men with that strategy. God, they really messed up if they have to do an emergency Ricardo on this one. Like, everyone fucked up. If that's
isn't that like why they're sticking with him? Like, isn't that the whole plan here? Why are they bringing him back? Why?
Ricardo? You think like the only reason he's in AlphaTauri is to eventually come through?
Yeah, or to. It doesn't. They don't seem to be talking a whole lot about Yuki Tsunoda. Although he has been pretty solid, I would say, this season. I don't know, man. Red Bull is a mystery.
Nothing suggests that he's ready for the pressure cooker of that team, and I'm not sure that team is capable of, with the tone deafness with which they can handle international drivers, and also just like the lack of patience and sympathy they have for anyone who's not like just rock solid. I'm not sure it's a good environment. Look, here's a question. What's Alex Palou's super license point situation now that he's bagged another IndyCar championship?
I think he's in the green.
I think he is too. Like, I gotta believe. Look, I think if there's any F1 teams that have possible vacancies they're looking at, and they're not at least toying with like, might this guy be willing to come over and do it? I think you're a fool if you're not considering that. And I know that they've all got their drivers programs that like you need to show that there's a path to promotion and all that, but like, y'all, you guys followed IndyCar this year. Like, he didn't just win IndyCar. Like, he beat the shit out of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's probably the best. It's probably the best driver on the market if you can bring him, or if you can figure out a way to swing it.
Does he have? Because he's a reserve for McLaren, right? I think he is.
I think that's
famously not.
No,
is he not?
Okay.
That's what. Remember that
I
huge
do,
breakup
but he's
with
not.
McLaren.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. He isn't. Yeah,
that relationship is not. That's not there anymore. Is
it? No, Danny. It's it's your boy. Yeah.
Pato?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
My interest in Palou is because he is actually Spanish as well. Like, has he always like? There's just like the general thing of, don't European open wheel drivers want to be in F1? Has he? I don't know much about his past. Like, has he had desires to be in? Like, was he in GP3?
That's a good question.
Palou, I think, absolutely does.
Right.
I have a list here of who has the super license points to compete next year. At FIA_SL_, definitely not an official FIA Twitter account, maintains a Google Doc spreadsheet.
Great.
Which I will link in the show notes. And we have a number of names here. I think there are 37. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm just gonna point some names out here. At the top, tied Joseph Newgarden and Scott Dixon with 90 points. You need 40 to race in F1. Alex Palou has 88, so he's in third. Teo Porcher, Robert Schwartzman, Jose Maria Lopez, Mike Conway, Antonio Felix da Costa, and Rio Hirakawa are the top 10. Scrolling down a little bit, we got, who else do I recognize? Mitch Evans, Will Power, Felipe Drugovich, Jack Doohan, Arthur Leclerc, Charles' brother.
Yeah.
Robin Frines, Eduardo Mortara, Scott McLaughlin, Callum Ilott, Shane Van Ginsbergen, and one Ferdinand Habsburg.
Oh my God.
Oh wait, hold on.
Oh my God.
We
Get
can
the
bring
king in
His
there.
Highness
That's right.
into
The king of European sports.
The Emperor.
The Emperor, you're right, yeah. Amazing. Palou did race in 2018 in Formula 3.
Okay.
Came 7th.
There you go.
Yeah, so plenty of indies to pull from, at least on that list.
Well, speaking of lists, let's run down the driver standings as they stand at the end of the Qatar race weekend with the sprint and the race. Max Verstappen, what do you know? He's still on top. He is the driver's champion, as well as Red Bull Racing being the constructor's champion. His teammate Sergio Perez is in second with 224 points. Lewis Hamilton is the one in third with 194. So stranger things have happened. Fernando Alonso is in fourth with 183. Carlos Sainz in fifth with 153. Charles Leclerc in sixth with 145. Lando Norris in seventh with 136. George Russell in eighth with 132. Oscar Piastri in his rookie year is in ninth place with 83 points. Lance Stroll is in 10th with 47. Pierre Gasly's got 46. Ocon has 44. Albon has 23 points in 13th place. Then we've got Bottas with 10. Hulkenberg with 9 in 15th. Zhou's got 6. Tsunoda and Magnussen both have 3. Liam Lawson has 2. And then Logan Sargent, Nick DeVries, and Daniel Ricciardo all with 0. In the constructor standings, Red Bull Racing is on top, having secured that championship with 657 points. Mercedes is in second with 326. Ferrari in third with 298. Aston Martin's in fourth with 230. McLaren in fifth with 219. Very interesting. Alpine's in sixth with 90. Williams has 23, thanks to Alex Albon. Alfa Romeo has 16 in eighth place, which I think is a swap from last week, because Gene Haas and team are now in ninth again with 12 points, and Alpha Tauri has 5. Oh, gosh. If you'd like to send us an email, you can do so over at shift+F1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. I'm going to log into my password thing here because I have neglected to log in to the Formula One
The
Fantasy League. So
No
why
worries.
don't you stretch for a second, Danny?
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the driver standings for the rest of the season. I do think the Alonso Hamilton one is going to be fun to watch because he did close up a little bit on him with that 6th place because of Hamilton's retirement. So there's definitely something there. And apart from that, just trying to see if there's any other possible fights. I mean, Gasly and Ocon for 11th is in there, but nobody really cares about that. I'm not sure if you're going to see much more movement. Lando and George, maybe, especially with the rising McLaren. Although Lando was already ahead of George, so there's 4 points between the two of them. But yeah, a little bit. But you're right. The constructors, I think that big battle between Aston and McLaren is going to get very interesting, as we've seen the McLaren sort of really just completely step up in the past couple of races. It's wild how, it's hopefully they're watching them on Drive to Survive this year.
Yeah, indeed. Well, the craziness continues in our fantasy league, which you can join using the link in the show notes. We have a 5-way tie for second place for the Qatar Grand Prix weekend between Wild Boys.
Great.
Z,
Love that
naturally.
TV show. Is that Steve-O or Chris Pontius who's got that team?
They both manage it. Verlapping the grid.
Nice.
Microwave oven programming. Logan Lieutenant.
Very good. I get that.
And Bono, my fantasy team.
Cool.
But in first place from Qatar, we have Ted's Fantasy Shorts.
Beautiful.
Does he have, do you have like an airbrushed dragon set of shorts, perhaps?
No, that sounds great, though. He does wear a lot of shorts, obviously, in his little post-race. I'm glad. He'd be getting heat stroke if he didn't.
It's true. We have a change for the lead in the overall
Lord.
standings, however, but in third place, it's time to call _Gene. In second place, we've got paying the Stroll toll, He certainly did. And in first place, we have Horner to the max.
Terrific. Aren't we all?
We certainly are. But again, you can hit us up on email or the Twitters, the socials, whatever is linked in our...
X.
No, I'm so sorry. I'll bleep that out. But that's us around the internet. Should we take it around the world of racing, Danny?
Let's race around the world. Yeah.
Oh, boy. MotoGP is at the Pertamina Mandalika International Street Circuit in Indonesia.
Awesome.
Yes, indeed. The WeatherTech Sports Car Championship is at Road Atlanta in Brazelton, GA for the Motul Petit Le Mans.
Oh, the Petit Le Mans. J'aime le Petit Le Mans.
The NASCAR Xfinity Series is at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the Alsco Uniforms 302.
Getting warmed up for the F1.
Yeah, certainly is. Although it's going to be very cold there.
It is.
Very, very different from
nighttime. Yes, you're right. It's going to be maybe too cold in Vegas, but we'll talk about that later.
Wild swings. We've got Super GT at the Autopolis International Racing Course, which is not a planet. It is merely a circuit located near Kamitsue Village in Oicha Prefecture, Japan. 30 kilometers or 19 miles northeast of Kumamoto.
Oh. What was the name of the in what was the manga we watched? Redline. What was the name of the because Autopolis sounds a bit like, remember the planet they raced on?
What was the name of that planet?
What was it called? It was something hardcore. I'll look that up.
Okay, you look up while I say we've got NASCAR.
Oh my.
Also at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Place your bets for the South Point 400.
It's not as good a name as I was expecting.
Certainly not.
I'll be honest.
It's certainly no Funky Boy.
It's
the Funky Boy 400.
I forgot about Funky Boy. Oh my god, I have to watch Redline again.
Inexplicable Funky Boy.
Dude, you just said Funky Boy, and in my head, I heard the scream he makes. Okay. And I hadn't thought about Funky Boy in months, but that's how deep in my brain Funky Boy lives. I heard that scream. Oh my god, what a great movie. Go be a patron and go listen to our podcast. My god, we had so much fun doing that one.
Yeah. What is the name of that planet? Is it like...
I'm still looking it up. I feel orbital disintegration canon is here, but I'm still trying to find the planet. Here
also a good name.
Yeah.
Well, until Danny figures that out, I guess I'll steel myself for whatever is coming next in this day in history. Because
you're right. I'm up.
Someone else, Rob. Some news I forgot to include.
Okay.
Just because it happened last week. So the F1 teams agreed to let the teams in the back spend $20 million to fix their to do the capital investment fund that Vols and a couple of the other back marker teams were advocating for. It's a little more complicated than obviously there's some tiered things that happened. Everybody I think ended up with getting a little bit more money to spend on capital expenditures, but the backmarker teams got the most. So it's sort of a half a loaf thing, but it is meaningful for them to make upgrades to facilities and infrastructure. So yeah, that I think sensible heads prevailed here.
That's good. Still nothing, Danny?
Robo World.
Great.
I couldn't forget Robo World. Although now all I'm thinking about now is Funky Boy. Jesus Christ. I'm going to Google that scene when this is over.
And on this day in motorsports history, Funky Boy was hit by an orbital laser cannon.
Disrupting the Red Line event.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my God. On this day on October 11th, in the past. Let's read into it. After winning his third and last title at McLaren in 1991, Ayrton Senna was hungry for more success, but a downturn in the fortunes of the team held him back. In 1992, he was completely outclassed by Nigel Mansell and Williams, who had got the upper hand on McLaren. This continued with Prost in 1993, and Senna was desperate to get into the Williams car for 1994. Eventually, he got his wish and pushed Prost into retirement in the process. Williams announced that they had signed Senna on this day in 1993. Senna said, "It is like a dream come true." It was to turn from dream to nightmare for Senna, who was killed at Imola in only his third race with the team. So once again, this book provides us with just the most morbid.
It couldn't
of
just
memories.
let it be about the signing.
It couldn't have just said that. Like, we all knew what happened next book. You didn't have to. All right. The A1 GP series, known as the World Cup of Motorsports because each team represents their nation. Danny's editor note sounds a bit like Sail GP.
Oh.
Became an all-Italian affair in one respect today in 2007 when it was announced that Ferrari would be supplying all the engines for the cars from 2008. There you go. Bit of A1 GP knowledge for you there.
Oh, yeah. When...
Must have been a slow day on October.
The World
11th.
Cup of Motorsports?
They didn't mention when that died.
No, they didn't. Good point.
When
Good
was
point.
this published?
Yeah, this was. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. It's got. Yeah, who knows?
All right, let's bring this one to a close, shall we? I am getting heat stroke over here.
Yeah, it's been a long podcast.
Final thoughts, Rob, on Qatar.
I don't think it's good. They basically lobster potted a bunch of F1 drivers, but aside from that, pretty entertaining race overall. Like, I had some real misgivings about, like, is this going to be an interesting circuit to see them race on? And you know what? It was. There's enough places where people can take their shot that there was a lot of action. I don't know if there would be a lot of action if you weren't doing the whole, like, it's nothing but qualifying laps the entire way through. But it was a more interesting race than I expected. I just hope that wasn't mostly down to the fact that they were beating the hell out of these poor drivers.
Yeah. Final thoughts, Danny.
Yeah, real funny one. I think it was a great, like, A/B test, or I don't know. It shone a light on how interesting a sprint weekend can be, I guess. Like, I found both races to be interesting in their own way. I loved the sprint race. I just thought it was like watching an episode of like a TV show. It was like a good 30 minutes of madness. Is what it felt like. Yeah, I don't know. I think the sprint, we talked a lot about the sprint over the years, and I think more often than not it has provided us with some novel races, which I think this year especially we were crying out for. And I also say is McLaren and a lot of the evolution we've seen from some of the mid-table teams has also done that too. Like, we've that and the fact that Perez has been so bad, I think, has provided us with races that, on the face of them, if you sort of squint and try not to see Max killing it and absolutely dominating it, have been pretty interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of good storylines still yet to be closed out. And maybe now that Max, officially has the championship, we can turn our attention to those. So, if you would like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes and the ad-free podcast and the official Shift+F1 Discord, you could do so over at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next week.
Meow.